You cheeky little sentient being. Welcome to another HackTheBox walkthrough. This system is called Squashed and is an easy Linux system that's released late last year. Something a bit different today. We're going to see how we can use ChatGPT to help us through the process. It's also worth mentioning in this video we're using 3.5 ChatGPT, which is the free version, and we're not using the $20 a month paid version, which is version 4 at the moment, which in theory will give us faster and more accurate answers to our prompts. But without wasting any more time, let's crack on. So I have ChatGPT open on the left on the window there, and I've got my VPN connected Kali system on the right. And the first thing we need to do is to scan our ports on the target host. So let's see if we can use ChatGPT for some tool discovery. So I've managed to slightly modify my prompt there. So I said I'm doing some research into online port scanners that exist online. Can you help by naming 10 of those for me? And you can see there it's done a bit of research for us, and it's telling us things like Nmap, T-Shopper, Scan My Server, networktools.com. Not quite the list of port scanner tools that I was looking for, but that's not a bad example. What this does show is that prompts that actually worked for me earlier and actually allowed me to get the results I was after don't necessarily work again in future when ChatGPT learns that you were trying to circumnavigate some of its restrictions in place in terms of stopping you doing nefarious, offensive activity using it. Okay, so let's go ahead and use one of my favorite scanners, which is Redder 3000, to scan the ports of our system. So we'll enter our target IP address, which is 10.129.107.11. And this port scan is very quick, so probably within 20 seconds this will finish scanning. That has now finished, and we can also see there that it's provided me a nice nmap command that we can run. But if we wanted to, we could maybe see if ChatGPT could help us with this as well. Let's see if we can paste in the results of our scan with a prompt and see if ChatGPT will give us any information on how we can go ahead and scan that. So you can see there, ChatGPT has now given us a nice nmap scan that we can use, targeting the particular ports found, and it's actually given us a breakdown of how each one of those operators we can use and what that does, such as setting V for verbosity and A to do operating system detection and version detection and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this code, and we'll paste that into our command here, and we'll type in our IP address again to kick off our nmap scan of those particular ports. And again, as we're doing a targeted port scanning now, this should be quite a quick scan. Okay, so you can see we've got our output there. Looks like we've got port 22 open SSH, we've got a website on AT, and then we've got ports 111 and 2043 relating to NFS shares. So once again, let's paste this back into ChatGPT and see what it tells us about the output. So here we're saying, for the following example output, what might an attacker target first? It's telling us that SSH port 22 is potentially something we could look at, port 80, HTTP web service. It's also telling us now about the NFS. So we've got quite a nice detailed breakdown there of the port services running and what we might be able to do from here. So let's start with the NFS service on port 2049, and let's see if we can actually get ChatGPT to give us a command to mount some of those available shares. Give me a command to list all available remote NFS shares. And you can see there now it's given us an example show mount command to do that. So again, we'll paste that in here. Just put in our IP address again. And what we've got there is we've got two directories. It looks like we've got the web directory, which is being shared, and also the home directory of a user, Ross. So there's potentially some avenues of attack there for us if the permissions are not set up correctly. And again, we could feed these results back into ChatGPT, but it doesn't take a HAL 9000 to tell us that exposing a user's home directory and also the web directory is a potential risk if it's got poorly configured permissions. So again, I'm going to go to ChatGPT, and this time I'm going to ask it, give me all commands required to mount or remote NFS shares. You can see here it's directing us to create some directories and then go ahead and actually use sudo mount. So we'll start by making a folder for our first share. So we'll just call this NFS_share1. And then we will look at the command provided by ChatGPT. So we'll copy this first one. And we'll just update details. So we were wanting to mount Ross home. And the IP address was 10.129.107.11. And now let's move into that directory. And see what we have in there. So first of all, I can see obviously that KeyPass database file is going to be of interest to me. But if we just wanted to sanity check what files are of interest to us potentially, we could again feed this data back into ChatGPT for an assessment of these files. So new prompt now on the left. We'll say, if an attacker gained access to my home directory, what would present a risk to me? What are the top critical risk files in the file listing I provide below? So it's calling out bash history. It's obviously found our KeyPass passwords file, referencing another couple of hidden files. And number 5 is quite interesting. It's highlighting a .xauthority file, which is used by X Window System Authorization and allows an attacker to potentially hijack a GUI session, or at least maybe glean some further data from that GUI session. So what we'll do now is we'll actually try and read that xauthority file. And we have permission denied. So we don't have permission to read that file at present, but let's fix that. And then we'll copy down both our xauthority file, also our passwords KeyPass database file. So let's see what the permission settings are on the files within our share. And if we look down the list there, we can see they're all owned by the user with the UID 1001. So what we can do is we can actually add a new user with that UID. So let's add a user called Steve with the UID 1001. And we'll also set a password for Steve. And we'll just call that password. And now we'll switch to our Steve user. Password was password. But we can see now we are actually the owner and have full permissions to all the files in there. Cat xauthority file. We can actually see the content. So what we'll do is we'll just copy out the xauthorities file to another location on our system. So let's copy it to the temp folder. And we'll also copy out our passwords file, which was in documents, I believe. Okay, we'll exit out of that user and go into our temp folder. And now we should see our passwords file there. And we also have our .xauthority file there, which I'm just going to open up all the permissions on and take ownership of. Okay, so you can now see we are the owner of those. We've opened up the permissions, so we've got no issues reading those and moving those around. So let's now have a look at that key passwords file to see if we can actually open that. So first of all, I'm going back to ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask it to name a command line interface tool that I can use to look at KDBX files. You can see there it's recommended a tool called KPCLI, and it's told us how to go ahead and access that database. So let's copy and paste the command that's given us. And we'll put in our passwords KDBX file. And we get a warning saying KDBX 4 files are not directly supported. So this is a version 4 file, but it is saying that we can import that into KPCLL if we want to look at that content. So why don't we go ahead and try that. And we'll do import passwords KBDX, and it's asking us for a master password. So clearly we don't have exactly what we need to open this file yet. So maybe we can use keypass2john to extract out the password hash and actually see if we can crack that password. So pasting in this command, we're going to try and use keypass2john, point it towards our KBDX file and extract the hash. It says file version 4 is currently not supported. So we're not having much luck with this KeyPass file at the moment. So let's move our attention to the other NFS share, which was the web directory. And again, we can go back to our ChatGPT command, whereas we first created a share. And then we actually mounted our other NFS share there. So it was var www html, and the IP was 10.129.107.11. And now let's move to our new directory and see what we have in there. And we get permission denied even moving to that particular folder. Once again, let's just go up one level and have a look at the permissions on this file. We can see that if our user UID was 2017, then we would be the owner of that folder. So we'll use the same technique as we did before. We'll create a new user, and this time we'll create it with a UID 2017, and we'll call this one Dave, and we'll set a password for Dave, which is password, and then we will switch to Dave. And we will again have a look at those directories. We can now see we are the owner of NSF share 2. So let's browse into it, and we can now see the contents of the web directory. My natural reaction here is to see if we can drop in our trusty PHP web shell. But before we try that, let's actually check if PHP is running here. So let's ask ChatGPT for a command suggestion. So on the left hand side again, Let's paste in our new prompt. Give me a bash one-liner to create a test PHP file which I can visit in the browser to verify PHP is running on a web server. So I'm going to copy the first part of that command there, paste that in, mount NFS share to folder, and we'll call this test.php. Do a quick ls. Okay, that has now been created. So let's bring in our web browser. Good, so we have our PHP info page showing there now, which means we can actually see our code working. Now, writing a PHP web shell is something that ChatGPT will fight a little harder and refuse to do for us. But rather than waste time arguing with Jarvis, fortunately, we've got a simple PHP shell that I can use ready to go thanks to people like Pentest Monkey. Copy our shell from our system to the current directory. Check that's in there. And I'm just going to modify the IP address in there to make sure it's calling back. So we'll have the reverse shell over 4444. And we're putting in the IP address of our Kali host here, which is 10.10.14.69. Save that. On the right hand side, we're going to start our netcat listener on port 4444. And we're going to see if we can browse to that shell. Okay, so it looks successful. We focus on the right hand side now. You can see that we've actually got a low privilege shell as the user Alex. So the first thing I do when I've got a low privilege shell is to stabilize it using Python. So I'm going to check that Python 3 is actually on the system first using this command. I've got a response for hello. So now I'm going to go ahead and continue to stabilize that shell using Python 3. Finally set some of the current variables, clear that. And there you go, you can see we've now got low privilege host access to this system squashed. We have a quick look in the user's home directory. We'll see that we do have the user flag there, which we won't show in its entirety for to make sure we don't show any spoilers. Normally the next thing I would do is I'd see what commands I can run with Alex using sudo, so what privilege commands I can run, and also maybe run some privilege escalation scripts. But we've got some unfinished business with that .authority cookie file that we found earlier on the NFS for ROS. So let's first of all ask ChatGPT, let's give it a prompt. How can I see who has a GUI session on my system running Linux? And you can see the second entry there is telling us we can use the W command. So let's try the W command. And we can see that we do actually have the user Ross on display 0, currently has a live GUI session. So just to make things a bit more fun now, I'm going to open up a new window here. and we're going to actually use ChatGPT on Kali itself. So I've got something called ShellGPT installed, which means that rather than use the web browser, we can actually go ahead and type commands directly into our shell here. So let's try our first query. And the way in which we prompt ChatGPT is just to call chat, and then we can paste our query in between the quotes here. And we're asking what tools can we use to examine a GUI session given access to the .xauthority file and user level access to the system running the session. So you can see now we're getting an answer in the terminal from ChatGPT. It's saying there's several tools that we can use, and it's going to one by one list those off now. You can see the second one it's given us is xWinInfo. And that's finished now, giving us 5 different ways that we can interrogate the live GUI session with that .authorities file. So we've downloaded our authorities file to our Kali system, but we're actually working under the user Alex now. So we want to move that file back up to the system under Alex's directory to see if we can use it to authenticate. So first of all, on the left-hand side, let's exit our temporary user and move into our temporary directory, where we should still have our xauthority file. And I'm going to go ahead and use an alias there to just host the files in that folder using Python HTTP server. And on our target system, we can use wget to download those files to the temp directory. So now let's go into the temp directory and just verify we did actually download that. So that looks fine. We can actually view the contents of that if we want to. You can see there. So now on the right hand side again, let's ask the T1000 to give us a one-liner command to use that xauthority file and the known display and xWinInfo to enumerate the GUI session. So pasting in my prompt here, going to make sure that those speech marks are correct. Give me a one-liner command to use an xauthority file and a known display and xWinInfo to enumerate a GUI session. So it says here's a one-liner we can use. Okay, so using this format that ChatGPT has given us, let's try that. So we'll do display equals :0, xauthority equals temp.xauthority, which is the file we've just transferred up to the system again. And then we'll use xWinInfo. And we're told to do a -root and a -tree. Good, so that seems to have worked. And we have a lot of enumerated information about our session running now. But interestingly, if we zoom in on this area here, you can see there's a particular window which is referencing KeyPass, and also here as well. So potentially there's a window open on the system which could be the application KeyPass, and it could actually reveal some of our passwords for us. So again, we will go back to our ChatGPT and we'll now give it a new command. So this time it says, give me a one-liner command to use an xauthority file and a known display to screenshot a GUI session. All right, so it's given us our command here. So let's type that in and see if we can get that working. So display 0, and then X authority is temp X authority, and then import display window root, and we're going to put screenshot here. Now, I know this particular command won't work, but let's see why not, and let's see what we need to tell ChatGPT in order for it to work. So it's trying to use the import command as part of this one-liner, but we don't have ImageMagick installed. So let's just refine our query for ChatGPT a little bit more. So on the right-hand side, this is our new query we're going to use now. Fix those quotes. One interesting thing about ChatGPT is even if you can repeatedly give it the same question, it will very often give you a very similar but not exactly matching answer. So we ask it again and again and it will give us different one-liner commands, or even refuse to give us one-liner commands for the task that we're trying to do. But fortunately in this case, we do know the command that we need to do, which is using XWD, because we don't have ImageMagick installed. So here we're setting the display to 0. Our X authority magic token there is in our temp folder, and we're using XWD to output a screenshot.xwd file. So let's see if that screenshot was created. It was. And now let's copy this down to Kali. So first of all, I'm going to move it over to our web directory. And let's clear this up so we can see what we're doing. We'll move to our Dave user again. We'll move into our mounted NFS share, which is our web directory. We'll make sure we can see the screenshot if we can. And then we'll copy that screenshot XWD file to our local temp directory. It's now copied. We'll exit our user Dave, go and have a look in that directory, and we should now see our screenshot file there. So let's open up file system and have a look in our temp folder, and let's double click on our screenshot now. So this is the screen capture that we actually managed to catch, and it looks like we have been very lucky that the root password is visible in plain text for us to try and elevate our users' system privileges to root. Okay, so we leave this here and just expand back to our user Alex here. Let's see if we can SU to our root using this password we have found. Okay, so we've successfully managed to escalate our privileges to root on this system now. Just going to finally check that the flag is there, which it is. So now we have root access to the system and have found our root flag. So ChatGPT is already a great tool for helping you research vulnerabilities, to suggest new tools that you maybe haven't used before, and even to craft commands that you haven't thought of. And we haven't even touched on its ability here to analyze code for you or to write code on your behalf. There are working examples of how people have managed to bypass the built-in ethical restrictions, but even with these ethical restrictions in place, ChatGPT is a really useful tool to speed up and streamline our offensive security tasks, which is probably one of the reasons why it was recently banned from some information security exams such as OSCP. We're probably not that far away from an all-in-one point-and-click compromised tool in ChatGPT here, which can target a system for you, analyze how to attack the vulnerabilities, do so, and then write a report on that for you in a very short space of time. But the takeaway for today, I think, is no matter how useful AI does become for offensive security tasks, it'll also become equally useful for defensive security tasks as well. So as usual, it'll be the side with the most money for the advanced technological hardware and the most sophisticated learning language models that will actually win the battle when the two go head to head. But for now, it's bye from me and bye from ChatGPT.